The era of strategic ambiguity is over. In a move that fundamentally destabilizes the global chessboard, Washington has just issued a direct, zero-tolerance ultimatum to Beijing. The target: a highly classified shadow supply chain funneling advanced military hardware straight into the heart of Tehran. The administration has drawn a definitive red line, delivering a stark warning of crippling economic and strategic consequences if China continues to arm the Iranian regime. Make no mistake, this is no longer a low-intensity proxy dispute. It is a direct superpower confrontation over the balance of global power. Beijing is actively equipping a hostile actor to overextend U.S. naval assets and rewrite the security architecture of the Persian Gulf. They are testing the limits of American deterrence. The stakes could not be higher. The countdown to a severe geopolitical fracture has officially begun. Welcome back to the channel. We do not deal in speculation. We analyze raw data, tactical shifts, and the cold reality of global power dynamics. Today, we are looking at a critical intelligence flashpoint. The United States is no longer engaging in back-channel diplomacy. The administration has openly threatened Beijing regarding its weapons pipeline into the Middle East. If you want to understand the true motives behind this unprecedented standoff, forget the political rhetoric. We are breaking down the hardware, the strategy, and the grim reality of a global system on the brink. Let us get into the data. According to recent reports circulating through open-source intelligence networks, the administration has dropped the hammer. The White House has delivered a blunt, uncompromising directive to Beijing: halt the covert transfer of advanced military technology to the Islamic Republic or face catastrophic economic retaliation. This is not about diplomatic posturing. It is about cold, hard steel, and the undeniable shift in military capabilities within the Persian Gulf. For years, Beijing has played a subtle game: plausible deniability, moving dual-use technology through complex, multi-layered shell companies. But the intelligence apparatus has pierced the veil. The data matrix shows a clear, systematic escalation. We are no longer talking about low-grade munitions or simple drone frames. The hardware currently flowing into the hands of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, is fundamentally altering the regional balance of power. Let us break down the exact technology triggering this crisis. First, and most critically, advanced guidance systems. Intelligence indicates that Chinese aerospace entities are supplying microelectronics, satellite navigation modules, and terminal phase targeting sensors. These components are being retrofitted onto Iran's existing ballistic missile arsenal. The result? The base stay. A massive reduction in circular error probable. Missiles that were once imprecise terror weapons are being transformed into highly accurate, ship-killing munitions. This directly feeds into the second major hardware transfer: anti-ship ballistic missile technology. Open-source defense analysts point to an alarming evolution in Iran's coastal defense batteries. By integrating Chinese electro-optical seekers and active radar homing technology, Tehran is constructing a lethal deterrence dome over the Strait of Hormuz. They are building the capability to track, target, and strike moving naval vessels at extended ranges. The threat to carrier strike groups is no longer theoretical. It is active, it is mathematical, and it is growing. Let us look at the tactical reality. A U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer operates with the Aegis combat system. It is the absolute gold standard for missile defense. But even the Aegis system has intercept limits. If the IRGC, utilizing Chinese targeting architecture, launches a synchronized multi-vector saturation strike, the mathematical probability of a system failure skyrockets. The administration knows this. They are looking at predictive models that show severe damage to capital ships and unacceptable personnel losses. This is the exact definition of anti-access area denial, an A2AD envelope engineered by Beijing but operated by Tehran. Furthermore, we are tracking a surge in the supply chain for heavy, long-range unmanned aerial vehicles, the infamous drone swarms. While often dismissed as cheap, asymmetrical weapons, their true danger lies in mass deployment. Beijing is reportedly facilitating the transfer of high-grade carbon fiber, specialized micro-engines, and encrypted telemetry arrays. This allows the IRGC to produce these platforms at a terrifying scale. A swarm tactic designed to saturate and neutralize even the most advanced air defense networks. According According to financial intelligence whispers, the White House has prepared a devastating counteroffensive. We are talking about targeting the absolute core of China's defense industrial base. If the shipments do not stop, Washington is prepared to weaponize the U.S. dollar, effectively locking major Chinese financial nodes out of the global system, a lethal blow to their economic stability. The strategy is clear. Beijing is providing the neurological system for Iran's kinetic muscle. They are upgrading a regional disruptor into a formidable strategic threat. The supply chain must be severed. This hardware pipeline is the ultimate bargaining chip, and Washington has just called the bluff. Zoom out from the hardware. Look at the map to understand why the administration is willing to risk a catastrophic economic rupture with Beijing. You have to understand the geography of leverage, the Strait of Hormuz. It is the jugular vein of the global economy. A narrow, treacherous choke point measuring just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Through this precarious corridor flows roughly 20% of the world's daily oil consumption and a massive share of liquefied natural gas. Now, place the newly upgraded Iranian military apparatus right on the northern shore of that choke point. With Chinese targeting arrays and ballistic upgrades integrated into their coastal batteries, Tehran is no longer just a regional nuisance. They are erecting an impenetrable deterrence dome over the strait. This fundamentally shifts the operational reality for the United States Fifth Fleet, headquartered just down the coast in Bahrain. The Persian Gulf is shallow. It is constrained. It is an absolute nightmare for a blue water navy. U.S. carrier strike groups rely on depth and distance to survive. In the Gulf, those advantages vanish. An aircraft carrier operating within the Strait of Hormuz is functionally boxed in. If the IRGC initiates a synchronized launch of Chinese-guided anti-ship missiles combined with a swarm of heavily armed drones, the reaction time for U.S. defense systems is reduced to mere seconds. We are talking about advanced radar signatures, electronic warfare, the ability to potentially blind U.S. Aegis cruisers before a kinetic strike even occurs. Chinese tech provides the electronic shielding necessary for Iran to launch from hidden subterranean missile silos scattered across the Zagros Mountains. The risk of sustaining critical impact and massive personnel losses becomes mathematically unacceptable. This is the exact leverage point. According to maritime security analysts, Tehran does not need to sink a U.S. aircraft carrier to win. They only need to credibly threaten global commercial shipping. The moment an advanced Chinese-linked guidance system locks onto a commercial supertanker, the global maritime insurance market collapses. Premiums skyrocket. Shipping conglomerates halt operations. The flow of oil stops entirely. The immediate fallout, a catastrophic shockwave to the global energy grid. Western economies, already struggling to maintain stability, would face a devastating surge in oil prices. An energy shock of this magnitude acts as a regressive tax on the entire Western world. It destabilizes allied governments in Europe and fractures political unity. But here is the critical underlying reality. This is exactly what Beijing is engineering. By feeding this technology to Iran, China is outsourcing the disruption. They are transforming the Middle East into a strategic quagmire for the United States. And what about China's energy needs? Beijing has already calculated the risk. Through heavily discounted illicit overland pipelines and massive strategic reserves stockpiled from Russia and other sanctioned nations, they have insulated their own economy. They have fortified their position while setting the rest of the board on fire. Washington is forced to make an impossible choice: either abandon the Persian Gulf, surrendering control of global energy to a hostile axis, or heavily reinforce the theater, dragging vital naval and air assets away from other critical regions. Every guided missile destroyer, every squadron of F-35 stealth fighters, and every Patriot battery deployed to protect the Strait of Hormuz is a strategic asset that is not patrolling the Indo-Pacific. This is textbook realpolitik. China is spending pennies on the dollar, transferring microchips and guidance software to force the United States to spend billions deploying capital ships. It is a calculated strategy of overextension. Beijing is weaponizing Iranian ambition to bleed American resources, all without firing a single shot themselves. The administration has realized that the true center of gravity in the Middle East is no longer Tehran. It is the supply chain connecting Tehran to Beijing, and that chain must be shattered. The counter-move is brutal, and it is entirely economic. When the administration issued this ultimatum, it did not threaten kinetic strikes on Chinese soil. It threatened something Beijing fears far more: total financial decapitation. We are looking at the potential deployment of secondary sanctions on a scale never before witnessed in modern financial history. According to financial intelligence sources, the Treasury Department has already drafted the targeting packages. If the IRGC continues to receive advanced guidance modules, Washington is prepared to drop the hammer on China's largest state-owned financial institutions, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, the Bank of China, the Agricultural Bank. If they process a single transaction linked to these covert tech transfers, they risk being completely severed from the SWIFT banking network. This is the weaponization of the U.S. dollar in its purest form. Despite the endless rumors of alternative financial blocks and de-dollarization, the greenback remains the undisputed king of global commerce. Cutting off access to dollar-denominated clearinghouses is a lethal blow designed to crater the Chinese export economy. You cannot run a global manufacturing empire if your banks cannot process international payments. The fallout? Catastrophic. But that is how the great game is played. Furthermore, the administration is leveraging the broader trade war, utilizing an aggressive unpredictability that has become its geopolitical signature. This ultimatum is not happening in a vacuum. It is being stacked on top of existing technology embargoes and massive tariff walls. Washington is signaling that the entire architecture of U.S. China trade is now contingent on the Middle East remaining stable. They are holding hundreds of billions of dollars in bilateral trade hostage to force Beijing into compliance. But here is the critical question. Why is Beijing willing to risk economic annihilation just to arm a regime in Tehran? To understand this, you must look at the grand chessboard from the perspective of the Chinese Central Command. It is all about the Pacific. For over a decade, the United States has desperately tried to execute the pivot to Asia. The Pentagon wants to transition its heavy assets, its carrier strike groups, and its strategic focus out of the Middle Eastern sandbox and into the Indo-Pacific. They want to contain Chinese expansionism. Beijing knows this. Their ultimate nightmare is a fully unified, hyper-focused American military presence operating strictly in their backyard. So, what is the counter strategy? Create a permanent, inescapable quagmire. By funneling high-end military tech to Iran, Beijing is deliberately turning up the heat in the Persian Gulf. They are raising the threat level so high that the Pentagon cannot afford to leave. Every time the IRGC rolls out a new anti-ship ballistic missile battery powered by Chinese microchips, U.S. Central Command is forced to request more assets, more Aegis destroyers, more Patriot missile battalions, more fifth-generation fighters. These are finite resources. A guided missile cruiser anchored off the coast of Bahrain is a cruiser that is not patrolling the Taiwan Strait. A squadron of F-35s deployed to the Middle East is a squadron not deterring Chinese maritime militias in the South China Sea. Beijing is executing a masterclass in strategic distraction. They are using Tehran as an anvil and forcing Washington to exhaust its hammer, continuously swinging at it. The axis of power here is undeniable. China provides the technological nervous system. Russia provides diplomatic cover and raw materials. Iran provides the geography and the willingness to escalate. Together, they are constructing a decentralized network designed to bleed American hegemony dry. The administration's ultimatum is a calculated attempt to break this cycle. They recognize that a kinetic conflict with Iran only plays into Beijing's hands. It deepens the quagmire. The only way to win is to cut the puppet strings, to make the cost of arming Tehran so financially devastating for China that they are forced to step back. It is a massive geopolitical gamble. If Beijing calls the bluff, the global economy shatters. If Washington backs down, American deterrence is permanently neutralized. There is no middle ground. And while the world's attention remains entirely fixated on the Persian Gulf, the true objective is already in motion, over 6,000 miles away. You have to look at the second front. While Washington is consumed by the Tehran ultimatum, desperately trying to prevent a regional collapse, Beijing is systematically exploiting the distraction. Right now, in the shadow of the Middle East crisis, the tempo in the Indo-Pacific is accelerating at a terrifying rate. Open-source maritime tracking networks are flashing red. We are tracking a massive, coordinated surge of Chinese maritime militia vessels, backed by heavily armed Coast Guard cutters swarming contested atolls in the South China Sea. They are actively probing defenses. They are testing the limits of the U.S. security umbrella, calculating exactly how far they can push while American naval commanders are looking the other way. This is the lethal reality of the two-front dilemma. Beijing understands that American diplomatic bandwidth and military assets are finite. A distraction is only effective if you ruthlessly exploit the vulnerability it creates. Simultaneously, satellite intelligence indicates a heavy concentration of People's Liberation Army Navy assets. This includes advanced Type 055 guided missile destroyers, simulating rapid deployment blockade maneuvers in the Philippine Sea and the Taiwan Strait. This is not a coincidence. It is synchronized grand strategy. They are laying the groundwork for a rapid power projection in the Pacific, betting that a United States bogged down by an Iranian quagmire will lack the political will and the kinetic mass to intervene. The global security architecture is fracturing. We are witnessing the end of an era. The period of unchallenged American dominance has closed, replaced by a ruthless multipolar arena where an axis of adversaries actively coordinates to stretch U.S. resources to the absolute breaking point. The ultimatum issued by the administration is not just about stopping missiles from reaching Iran. It is a desperate 11th hour attempt to restore global deterrence before the chessboard is permanently flipped. If the threat of economic decapitation fails, if Beijing calls the bluff, Washington will be backed into a catastrophic corner. They will be forced to choose between two unthinkable outcomes: engage in a grinding, resource-heavy conflict in the Middle East and forfeit the Pacific, or abandon the Persian Gulf and watch the global energy market go up in flames. The next critical moves will dictate the trajectory of the next decade. A single miscalculation in either theater will trigger a cascading chain reaction. Keep your eyes on the data, not the headlines. We will continue to monitor the matrix. Dismissed.